I'm Sharon Brett Kelly, and today on The Detail, I'm at Auckland Airport to find out why regional airlines are doing it so tough at the moment. It's so tough that some of our smaller towns have lost or risk losing air services. So today I'm talking to two airline bosses who have a stern message to the government to do its bit. Plus I talk to a mayor about what it's like to lose an airline. In a hangar on the edge of the airport, several workers have pulled apart an Air Chatham's plane for maintenance.
This is our CAA Part 145 maintenance organisation. Very proud of it. We actually started it in Tonga, so we got all our approvals when we were operating Chatham Pacific in Tonga, and we were able to bring it all back to Auckland, New Zealand. So we're very lucky we fell on our feet and found this facility.
One floor up, the Chief Operating Officer, Dwayne Emmeny's office, overlooks the workroom.
And what the boys are up to at the moment out there is what we call a C-check. So every sort of 4,000 hours we bring the aircraft in and, as you can see there, sort of pull it apart and check everything, and then if we have to get anything repaired, we go back to the aircraft manufacturer Saab and they send us those repair statements. We put it all back together again and off it goes back on the line.
Dwayne's about to take over from his father, Chief Executive Craig Emmeny, who founded the airline 41 years ago. It comes at a time when this airline, like others, is struggling more than ever.
I guess I have to rely a lot on what Craig's telling me in terms of his experience over the last 40 years.
And Craig's your dad?
That's my dad, yep, that's right. So it's family business, still 100% owned by the Emmeny families, which we're obviously very proud about. He says it's never been harder. He obviously went through the GFC, but he said right now it's as hard as it's ever been. And he's gone through some things, competing against, Mount Cook Airlines, which was Air New Zealand at the time, and been grounded by the CAA in the 90s. So he's had some real challenges in his life. And this seems to be trumping a lot of them at the moment, which is kind of a sign of just how challenging it is. And I think it's mainly off the back of, a pandemic absolutely rocked the globe, and especially for air travel. And then you feel like you're getting out the other end, and then, the economy kind of goes into this quite deep recession. All of these airlines globally were trying to scale up at the same time. So it was just an absolute rush for aircraft, skilled people. For us, we've been hit really hard with the cost of engine overhauls and parts supply internationally. The supply chain seems to be getting back on track now, but the cost of things are still really, really high. Airports, airways, CAA, all the pricing's going up. And of course, from an airline point of view, it just goes straight to the bottom line.
So how do you keep going?
Well, I think you've got to remember what you're doing it for. I'm a very proud Chatham Islander. So that will always be the roots of me and why I do the job. And then it's just a case of recognising how much that community relies on air services. We play a massive role in that economy's survival.
But for its own survival, Air Chatham's has pulled out of Norfolk Island after decades, and its Auckland Whakatane service is up in the air. It's not the only one. Blenheim-based Sounds Air has dropped the Westport and Taupō routes and sold aircraft. Managing Director Andrew Crawford is angry there was nothing for the sector in the budget. And here's the irony.
Passenger numbers have never been better. Truly, it's not because people aren't flying. Our passenger numbers are through the roof. We've got rid of Taupō and Westport, and we're exceeding the numbers from last year with 2 less routes.
And so people are obviously prepared to pay what it takes to get a ticket.
Well, they're prepared to pay what we're charging at the moment, and I think if they got charged what it takes, they might not be. There's the rub. There's just not enough money in the tickets to do it.
No, so you're losing money at the moment, are you?
Correct.
Well, how long can that go on?
I wouldn't know one airline that isn't.
Is that right? You're all in the same boat?
Of course.
In November last year, the Herald ran a story about you and called you a regional success story. And then 3 months later, you said you were selling aircraft and giving up on government assistance. So what's going on?
Well, since COVID, it's just taken a dramatic turn. You only have to look at Air New Zealand. Air New Zealand's numbers are down dramatically. They're struggling with supply chain, struggling with pilots, struggling with the dollar, and all those things affect our industry as well, except much more so because we've only got 9 and 12 seats to sell. So those costs are, well, I don't like to say out of control, but they really, since COVID, they are out of control. And the dollar's absolutely in the toilet. Supply chain is worse. We would wait 2, 3, 4 weeks for a part. Not unusual now to wait 3 or 4 months. We had a aircraft last year. We put a new engine in. It was recalled twice in the first 6 months, and the plane spent 3 months on the ground. And there's no recompense for that. It just goes away to be fixed, and you're expected to pay for it.
When I buy an airline ticket with you, I'm not just paying for the seat. A portion of that ticket is going to so many different costs.
Absolutely. Yep. The three big costs in aviation are maintenance, fuel. Currently, we're paying 46% higher than the 10-year average before COVID, and labour. Then you can add in on top of that landing fees, airways fees, and a new joy that's just come along is the civil aviation is increasing the passenger service levy 145%.
So how do you survive?
With the goodwill of the shareholders.
But, how long can they...
Correct. That's why we in 2019, we got invited to talk to the Provincial Growth Fund through Minister Shane Jones and apply because regional aviation was seen by the PGF as critical to this country. We spent 11 months of our life applying, talking to ministers, only to be rejected at the last hurdle because the PGF did not see aviation as meeting their remit. No good. And then last year we got told, well, the Regional Infrastructure Fund, and we met Minister Shane Jones again, we met Minister Simeon Brown, and I know Air Chathams did as well. And we've also had support from New Zealand Airports Association, all the great work Billy Moore's doing there. As a group, bringing the regional airlines together to go, listen, this is a critical issue for New Zealand. Between us, we're flying approximately 600 flights a week around regional New Zealand, and that we don't do that for fun. That's essential services, and I can tell you a big part of it is healthcare, flying people from these regions to get healthcare. Anyway, we got told to apply to the Regional Infrastructure Fund. Once again, we're rejected because aviation didn't meet the remit of the RAF. They said they were looking for dams and stop banks.
So that's why you've given up on government assistance?
Correct. And we then went, right, well, there's no choice, and we pulled out of Wellington Taupo and Wellington Westport, and we've sold an aircraft, and it's just recently landed in Alaska, North America. It's gone. And another airline stepped in. We were told by government, see, the market took care of itself. Well, that airline is no longer operating Wellington Taupo and is down, I think, to 3 flights a week to Westport. We were doing 25.
What about your other routes? Are they secure?
They're okay at the moment, but pressure's on, no doubt about it.
Well, the pressure's also on for Taupō Mayor David Truwavis to find another airline to pick up the Wellington to Taupō service after Sounds Air, then Origin Air, dropped out.
So we have a wonderful service still operating. That's the Taupō to Auckland flight, twice a day, but we still got no connectivity with Wellington. So what a client has to do is fly to Auckland, then drop down to Wellington. So
it's crazy, isn't it?
Well, it is, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you're a tourist town, a very, a prosperous town in the middle of the country, and you haven't got a flight between the capital and you.
There wasn't a lot of tourist activity on that flight. Having said that, I'm sure now in 2025, there's a lot of activity around Taupō now. I don't know if you've been here lately, but we've got a 650 mil spend from tourism activities. So, the place has really sort of come of age, really, as Origin thought there was an ability there. But, unfortunately, they just didn't give it the time to, build a bit of a clientele up. So,
well, how long did they last, David?
Month to 6 weeks, probably.
Well, how did that make you feel when they said we're pulling out as well? We're not...
Yeah, it was a little bit disappointing. I just thought they might have given it longer. I was led to believe that they would certainly give it at least 6 months, but the ownership of Origin wasn't looking good in the forward booking space, so they decided to pull pin early. But, respect them for giving it a go, giving it a crack, but unfortunately it just didn't work out for them.
Why is that?
I think they monitor their costs very, very highly. You know, they are looking at their operating costs on a daily basis. So they made the call early.
And is anybody else waiting in the wings or, willing to step in?
There's not too many second-tier airlines in New Zealand. Obviously, Chatham Air is a possibility. Talked to Dwayne, the owner of Chatham Air, the other day. He was certainly going away to look at it. And indeed, Greg Foran from Air New Zealand was going to go and see if they had some craft available that could make it happen. But unfortunately, they've just come back to us and said not at this stage. But yeah, so not a lot of light in the tunnel at the moment. And we've got a brand new terminal, a $9 million terminal there that was PGF funding a grant that was afforded to us, and a beautiful terminal. But we've got a lot of operators at the airport. We've got about 57 odd operators, helicopter maintenance, fixed wing maintenance, all that sort of thing. So they're using the terminal quite a bit. So
it's not sitting empty all the time.
Oh,
but
no.
What does that mean to not be able to offer that direct service?
Well, it's a struggle for businesses. We have Department of Conservation, Contact Energy, Genesis Energy, lots of those mainstream companies in New Zealand. They've got quite a presence here in Taupo, with us producing 25% of the power in New Zealand. So they're having to shoot up to Auckland, 25 minutes, and then back down to Wellington. It's a couple of hours in the day of wasted productivity.
Could you have done any more to keep Sounds Air or Origin Air?
I don't think so. Yeah, they were looking for a direct investment in the company, and I don't think it's the council's business to be a part owner of an aviation company. We certainly provided quite a bit of marketing support for our destination marketing team, and of course, what the flavour of the councils are at the moment. At the moment, is stick to your knitting and all that sort of thing. So I don't think there was any appetite from the ratepayers to fund a airline. So I think the government, certainly have a role to play in some of these outlying areas like West Coast and Hokitika and what have you, to make these services a bit more viable and a bit of connectivity, to the main metros. I think there's a government paper working on it at the moment, so we'll see what comes out of that.
Could the government have done any more for keeping that Taupo service going?
No, all they need is money, really, to be underwritten. So I'm not requesting the government to do it, but I think they should really do a paper and look at it. Why are these second-tier airlines falling down in these smaller locations? Whakatane's another example as well. The regionals in New Zealand contribute quite a bit to the national GDP. So I just want to make sure the government are fully aware of our challenges.
From your perspective, David, how tough is it at the moment? I mean, I have talked to a couple of airlines and they say it's like, for example, Air Chatham's, which has been around for more than 40 years. It's the hardest time that they've come across. Yeah. It's incredibly tough. And I think it's the operating costs, whether it's the price of fuel, the price of wages, price of, activities. We're certainly happy to meet the mark with a second-tier operator as far as landing charges and all that sort of thing, the kiosk operation, all that sort of thing. We can help out there, no problems at all. But, they're finding it tough. And, of course, with the advent post-COVID, a lot of these companies are now meeting, over Zoom or Teams and saving the trip to Wellington. So, it's tough and trying to get that travel dollar. Up until now, have you always had that Wellington-Taupo connection? Not up until about 7 years ago when Air New Zealand pulled out. At the time, they said of lack of customers, but now they tell me lack of planes. They haven't got the planes that could service the flight. And to be fair to Mr. Foran, CEO Air New Zealand, and he just said we haven't got the craft at the moment. And, of course, everyone wants the craft at 8 o'clock in the morning as well. But he said they're at the sharp end of that tunnel now, so hopefully that might come right in time. We'll keep an open book, and certainly that anyone's keen to give it a crack, we would certainly support them. As David said there, Air Chatham's future in Whakatane is uncertain. Here's Dwayne again.
I would say the biggest risk to Whakatane as far as Air Chatham's and the Emily family are concerned is you've really got to want to have us there, So we went down and talked to council to really lay it all out and just say, this is the situation, these are the challenges, this is what we think we can do with your support to get it back on track. Now, you really want to be paying close attention to when you're having those conversations, because it's about what's that response like back, and forever and a day in the Eastern Bay of Plenty, it's always been very strong, very parochial. We love Air Chathams. We're so grateful for what you do. We're so grateful that you stepped in after Air New Zealand and you provide this great service to us. For whatever reason in the last few years, that seems to have gone away. And I know that as a business, we made some schedule change decisions through off the back of the pandemic, and that has not worked well for the community, and we totally own that. And I think that's why we wanted to go back and have that conversation and say, hey, we want to reset, we want to do this, but now we've got to, that takes time. Find the plane, get the crew, reset up that business schedule. But importantly, we want to know that you're here to support us. You really want us here. Yeah. And, if I'm being very honest, I don't think we're feeling that same level of support, which is sad because it's our longest standing North Island regional route.
That sounds very worrying to me.
Yeah, well, again, no decisions have been made. Opportunity's still there. And actually, as Craig and I said when we fronted council just recently, it means a lot to us.
So cash-strapped local councils are just another complication in this high-risk business.
You're one bad day away from maybe having to pull an engine off an aircraft and send it away because you had a bird strike. So it is very capital intensive, and effectively, my father and Air Chathams has treated our aircraft fleet like a bank. So you get an aircraft in and it's got low time engines and components on it, and you've just put it through a major maintenance inspection. So effectively that aircraft's good to go out the door for another 4 years. So you spend all of those 4 years trying to pile up your pennies to put back into a pool so that you can then go and reinvest in that aircraft again, or you're going back to the bank and saying, hey, look at all the stuff that we did over the last 4 years, look at how well we've grown our business, can you now refinance us to go and overhaul these engines and pay for this large maintenance inspection, and then off you go again. So it's kind of this debt spiral that you get stuck in. And so I guess what we're saying, or asking really, is that government can kind of intervene in that spiral.
What is the most important thing for the industry right now? What do you want?
I think the most important thing is that central government can work with the smaller airlines to come up with a concessionary loan scheme that supports us in the immediate term with a low or no interest option. But to be really clear, it is a loan, so it is money that those airlines will absolutely be paying back. It is money that is secured across our asset base, and the asset base is strong. It is the aircraft that the airlines operate, and that will put what I like to call a circuit breaker in place. So it will maintain everything that we have now, and then give us the opportunity to put that money that we're not paying out to our existing financial institutions, reinvest that back into the business, looking at how we can increase frequency, operate more aircraft, and grow the 3%. So the 3% of small New Zealand airlines that have huge potential for growth, actually unlocking that growth.
In an email to The Detail, the Associate Transport Minister James Mair told me the government is looking at concessionary loans among other options to support the sector, but hasn't made any decisions. He says the Commerce Commission is looking at competition in airports, and he's considering whether there is any benefit in further moves around airfare transparency and further scrutiny on how to reduce the wider costs facing the aviation sector. Andrew Crawford says the minister genuinely wants to help, but he's not hopeful.
It's only been 6 years. For 6 years, we've been fighting to try and get support, try and get regional aviation in this country recognised, and it just falls on deaf ears.
So if you're losing money and all the other airlines are also in the same boat, I mean, how much longer can you hang on for?
Well, that's a good question. Yeah, I don't know. What happens when the Buller Gorge gets washed out? Westport will be cut off, will be in a serious state, and it wouldn't be the first time that's happened. These airlines are critical to the infrastructure of this country. And at the moment, it's hanging off shareholders' mortgages. That's what happens.
Wow, that doesn't sound sustainable to me.
No, which is why we've killed 2 routes and sold an aircraft. But, I don't want to be too depressing about it because a lot of people fly with us, and they are critical to us. The reality also needs to be said, but no one is listening. Regional aviation is just good luck and all the very best.
Back to Air Chatham's Dwayne Emeny, who's looking to secure the future of his company and its 140 staff. If something doesn't change, are you going to survive?
I mean, we're pretty resilient, 40 years in aviation. And again, what we do to the Chatham Islands is critically important to us as people. So we're certainly going to do everything that we can. And I think what it really ends up happening, and this is kind of what's happening with other airlines, for Air Chatham's it would be a similar situation where we would have to look at what we are doing, how we are operating, the value in some of our assets, and say, well, it doesn't look like there's any support forthcoming here, so how can we potentially reduce the size of our organisation whilst ensuring that we maintain those things that are most essential. The whole system loses. If you're starting to look at it and go, well, I've got to reduce all of this cost, or I've got to sell down these assets, all it does is limits your capability. And what I think people forget about little old airlines like us is, we do so much all over the place. Obviously we've got an aircraft up in Tonga at the moment. We did a charter just last year for the UNDP where we flew officials from Fiji up to Tuvalu so that they could assess some of the effects of climate change up there, and then across to Tonga so they could have similar discussions there as well. ICC Women's World Cup, I mean, no one will know this, but Air Chatham's flew all of those teams all around the country. We won that contract. So it's not just those really important regional connections, but it's actually everything else that we do. The pandemic was another example. We flew over 500 tonnes of live export grade and export packed crayfish out of the South Island and Wellington into Auckland. Because we're smaller, we're agile, we're nimble, we're opportunistic. We can take up these things as they come along. Sure, it's not something that we jump up and down about, but it is critically important to the system.
That's it for today. The Detail is a newsroom production supported by RNZ and NZ On Air. This podcast was produced by Alexia Russell and engineered by Jeremy Ansell. Thanks to Dwayne Emeny, Andrew Crawford and David Trawavis. I'm Sharon Brett Kelly. Mā te wā.